We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Duwamish tribe, and we honor them with gratitude. We also recognize that GPS is a white-founded organization, working alongside many Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities. We see our privilege and take responsibility to use it in support of our community and work towards a more just society. Welcome to Together in the Kitchen, and this is the last episode of this year. What a year it has been. And so for this last episode, I thought it would be nice to take it a little sweeter, and perhaps it will be a good omen for the following year. In that case, we are going to make bibingka. To tell you the truth, I didn't know what bibingka was up until maybe 3 months ago, and I'm so glad that I found out what it was because it seems like a delicious sweet dish. Bibingka is a coconut rice-based dish. Bibingka comes from Indonesia and the Philippines, and it's most commonly, but it doesn't have to be eaten during the holiday season. In the Philippines, fun fact, Christmas and the celebration of Christmas actually is from September to December. You know, I think in the US we like to think that we do Christmas big, but from the photos and what I've seen, I think we have nothing on the Philippines, to be honest with you. Excuse me, I'm okay. Just choked on my spit. And yeah, so bibingka is also most commonly eaten in the morning time. So it's during the holiday season. You can find it during simbang gabi, which is a holiday mass, a Christmas mass that's done, an evening Christmas mass done in the Philippines. So usually you'll have mass, and then after you will snack on some bibingka or puto or other tasty, maybe steamed rice-baked treats. And also bibingka is most commonly eaten or most commonly prepared in a banana leaf, which we don't have. But if you can get your hands on a banana leaf, I highly encourage it. I personally think banana leaves are a great cooking tool, vessel, however you want to prepare it. That isn't utilized in the US so much, and I think other countries have really got the trick when using a banana leaf. And yeah, I think for this recipe, it's gonna be quick, it's gonna be easy. Also in preparation for this recipe, I reached out to my close friend Claudia, and they are Filipino, and they were talking to their dad about bibingka, Rudy, and he has really fond memories of eating bibingka. When he would go see his sister who worked in a hospital, Lulu, he would go see her. He said there was a, hole-in-the-wall restaurant that used to serve bibingka, and he said something that just really stuck out to me. He said, my young belly has delicious memories of it, and my old belly yearns for it and would love to make it together with you. And so I just thought that was very beautiful for a parent and a child to have that conversation. And also Claudia had shared that they didn't really eat bibingka that much. There was another dish, puto, that they would eat more than bibingka. And also I think it's utterly awesome that Rudy thinks of his belly in ages as young and old, and I think we all do that. when nostalgic for a certain meal. And just, I'm now thinking of myself and my body of young and old bellies, because aren't we all just young and old bellies walking around? And I love it. So thank you, Claudia and Rudy, for sharing that with me. And I hope you both do make it, and I hope it's awesome. And Claudia, I know you'll let me know if it is awesome. But for now, let's get into this recipe. Okay, so these are ingredients. And also, before we get started, I also want to mention that maybe an awesome key detail is that Rudy is a chef. So this whole notion of thinking in terms of young and old belly, I think maybe comes naturally to him. I think as people who love to cook, such as myself, it is something that I never thought of before, but makes so much sense. So just a little detail that I think you all should know. But let's get into our ingredients. So today we have some eggs, we have some sugar, some white sugar, and then we also have brown sugar. We have salt, baking powder, we have coconut flakes, dried coconut flakes, we have butter, we have glutinous rice flour. You can also, I've seen recipes you can make it with all-purpose flour if you have that on hand. The recipe that we're working with was actually shared with GPS staff member Alex Verada, and he said that he makes this during the holiday time and with his family, and that it's something really fond of him. So we're actually working from his recipe, and he does things a little differently. And then we have coconut milk, coconut cream, and the recipe calls for Edam cheese. We could not find that, so we used Gouda because it's a similar consistency. Okay, so first we're going to beat our eggs. This is just a little recipe prep that the recipe asks us to do. Oh my God, these eggs are hard. Really thick shell. Egg compost bowl. And just so you all know, a little quick detail is that I can't eat dairy or meat or any animal products, so Kellen and Emma will be thoroughly enjoying this bibingka. And I'm so glad to share it with them because they've worked so hard in helping me with these episodes. So now we're just gonna beat our egg. Okay, this looks good. Great. So I'm just gonna wipe down the counter a little bit. And now in the recipe, we are going to combine our sugar and our coconut milk. Our sugar and coconut milk are pre-measured. And if I can remember from memory that we have a 1.25 cups of coconut milk, and we also have 3/4 cup of sugar. So take that. This is some little creamy, chunky coconut milk. So I'm just gonna stir it and break it up just a little bit. Just to get the chunks broken up. But as briefly mentioned before, other places prepare bibingka differently. I've seen recipes where you can have jackfruit in it, cassava, what else? I've seen people kind of not beat the egg as much and have it kind of the whites still intact on top. So you might have heard of bibingka or eat bibingka where you live, and it might be a little different. So I just kind of thinned out this coconut milk. If that happens with you, if you get big chunks, just whisk it a little bit beforehand before adding your sugar. So I'm gonna add a 3/4 cup of sugar to this. This recipe is, you know, very sweet and very sweet and very like rich, I think. As I said, I've never had it before, but I think for me, all the times that I've had sugar and coconut milk, I've never walked away disappointed. Let's just say that. So figured, you know, it's our last recipe, so go big or go home was kind of my understanding. Now in this recipe, we are actually going to sift the salt, baking powder, and glutinous rice flour. So one thing I did realize when researching this recipe, researching its origins, and kind of making sure that we make it correctly is that you really want to find a rice flour pack that specifically says glutinous, and perhaps don't assume. That's what I did. So I'm actually a little too excited. I'm actually going to combine them. Okay, we're back. So I'm just going to whisk it to make sure that the salt, baking powder, and glutinous rice flour is all incorporated. And even now you can kind of see it breaking up a little bit better, and there's not as many clumps. And I'm actually going to use a ladle because this is a big bowl with a little sift, which, you know, if you don't have this fine mesh sift where you live, you know, use a pasta strainer if that's available. And if you don't have that, that's okay. The recipe will just be just as good. You might just have to stir a little bit more to make sure all the clumps are out. But yeah, I don't have a fine mesh sifter like we do at GPS. So I use a pasta strainer whenever I need to sift things for certain recipes. And I'm just gonna keep ladling this glutinous rice flour mixture. You can pretend it's like snow, you know? It's snowing while it's raining outside here in Seattle. And you can see we're forming a little mountain, just like Rainier Tacoma. And it's just gonna be a little magic, a little winter magic. So we are done sifting our glutinous rice flour, baking powder, salt mixture. And now we are actually gonna combine our eggs and coconut milk. And then we're gonna combine that mixture with the glutinous rice flour blend. So whisk it and pour it in. And the small bowl is going inside the medium bowl. And then the medium bowl is gonna go inside the large bowl. We wanna simplify it like that. It is like Goldilocks. Ooh, look at this beautiful color. Okay, so now I'm going to combine the egg coconut milk mixture to the glutinous rice flour mixture. So we are pretty much done incorporating the glutinous rice flour with the coconut milk, and you can see it's pretty thick, pretty velvety if you ask me. It honestly looks like icing, and I feel like if I was not vegan I would just eat this by the spoonfuls. So I'm just going to grease our baking pan with some good old butter. This is not included into the half cup that the recipe requires. And so just like eyeball, or you can use, you know, cooking oil if you have it, like a canola oil would be good. And I would highly suggest shying away from an olive oil, although it might have a nice olive oily flavor to it. I think the olive oil flavor might be a little too strong for this very much like delicate, balanced recipe. So I'm just gonna kind of draw it on like my Aunt Karen showed me. She's like, this is how we do it in North Carolina, Anya. Just drawing your butter. Also, people in other places probably do it this way. So So we are going to put our batter into our baking pan. You can also use a little larger one. I'm kind of getting a little nervous because this has a lot of baking powder in it, and I feel like it's gonna really rise to the occasion. So if you have a bigger one, maybe try that if you want a thinner Bibingka. We're gonna, ooh, this, look how luscious this is. So luscious. Oh my goodness. There's also a nice jiggle to it. It's like all these really exciting qualities. Annie, are you ready for some Bibingka? So, because this Bibingka is very thick and luscious, I'm just gonna jiggle it so I can kind of get into the into the corners nice and evenly, and kind of maybe get out some air bubbles if they're hiding in there. Also, this is just like fun. I did this with like I made pumpkin oat bars last night, and I did the same thing. Great. So we are going to put it in the oven. The oven is set at 375, and we're going to put it in for 15 minutes, and then we are going to melt some butter, coat it with some butter and some cheese, and then put it back in, coat it with butter, cheese, and sugar, and then put it back in, and then we're going to be eating it. So unfortunately in this part of the video, our mics cut out, and there's just a couple steps that are not caught. The sound's not caught. So I'm just going to do a quick voiceover for you. So here I am just getting the butter ready to melt it in a pot. Feel free to melt it in a microwave if you have that on hand. But what I like to do when melting butter on a stove or in a pot is to keep it on low heat and allow it to melt slowly. Butter tends to burn quite easily, so you don't want to put it on the highest setting. I like to put it, anywhere from low to medium, and not really above medium. And so you're going to want to melt your butter slowly, and it will really serve you in the long run. And so here I'm just kind of stirring the butter around to incorporate it all along the edges of the pot. And yeah, moving the butter around helps it melt faster, opposed to just letting it stay there in the pot. And then after about a minute and a half, we had our butter almost completely melted. It doesn't take long, and it ensures that your butter won't burn, which will also alter the flavor of your dish. So now you can actually see that I'm taking the Bibingka out of the oven. It's such a beautiful consistency. It's light, it's almost a little gelatinous and jiggly. And I am coating the top of the Bibingka with the butter we had just melted. And this process we're also going to repeat another time in the recipe, but for now I'm just thoroughly coating the Bibingka with as much butter as I can. I think the fact that we used a smaller dish left us with some leftover butter. But yeah, so I'm just taking a pastry or basting brush and coating the top of the Bibingka. If you don't have any brushing utensil or tool on hand, feel free to use a spoon. So what I would do is that I would spoon out the butter and just gently, drizzle it over the Bibingka, and then use the back of the spoon to spread it around, and then repeat that until the Bibingka is fully topped with butter. So also in this step, while it's after we put on the butter, we're going to add the cheese. I shaved this cheese with a cheese grater into the largest, grate setting, and I'm now sprinkling it on top of the Bibingka. If you do not have a cheese grater, no worries. Feel free to cut up or mince up the cheese in small little chunks. It's going to get melted. The cheese size just ensures that it gets evenly distributed on the top of the Bibingka, and that it can kind of melt at relatively the same rate around the dish. And yeah, we're using about a half a cup of cheese. And then once I'm done sprinkling it, we are going to put it back in the oven. So now our bibingka is in the oven for an additional 20 minutes. And while it's in the oven, we are going to do the optional icing glaze that Alex had highly suggested that we do. And in him giving this recipe to us, he didn't quite specify how much coconut cream, how much brown sugar we're doing. So right now I'm working with half a can of coconut cream and about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar. I think the coconut cream we might have had is of a looser consistency. I'm pretty sure if you were to use a full fat coconut cream, it would be a little bit thicker. But yeah, so we're just gonna whisk that up and serve it on the side. So now our bibingka is out of the oven for the second time. The cheese is melted, and now we are going to put on another coat of melted butter. And on this step, we are actually going to sprinkle the sugar on. And again, in this recipe, it was not specified how much sugar to sprinkle on, but I have 1 tablespoon to sprinkle it on. Feel free to add more or less of whatever you're choosing, but we're gonna coat it the second time with butter and sugar. And I think at this point is when our sound finally returns. Okay, so we took the bibingka out of the oven and we finished our glaze, which is nice and liquidy, and it's has a nice little film on it. Have our glaze, and then now we're gonna top it off with our coconut. Kellen, Emma, are you ready for the moment you've all been waiting for?
We are ready.
So I'm gonna let this sit for a minute. We're gonna get some plates, we're gonna get a spatula and serve it up. Okay, so I am just cutting some bibingka squares. Wow, look at that jiggle. And so typically, bibingka is steamed or cooked in a banana leaf. So it takes on a little different consistency. Oh my goodness, this is so fun. I'm having too much fun with this bibingka. We can add some of the glaze from Alex's suggestion. Okay. Now, Emma's gonna give me the camera and I'm gonna see how Emma and Kellen like it.
Wow. That is very good. It has a lovely light coconutty flavor. The texture is amazing. The coconut flakes on top add some, like a different texture, like a crunchier texture. It's just, I'm a fan.
I mean, it was tasty enough that they all came back for seconds, so I guess that tells you something. But yeah, let us know how you like it. Let us know if you've had anything similar. Let us know if you were able to get a hold of a banana leaf. We want to know. And I just want to take a moment to thank all of the people who have been a part of Together in the Kitchen. Emma, Callan, Maya, Claudia, Annie, and also thank you, Claudia, my friend Claudia, and Rudy for sharing with us your experience with bibingka, and let us know if you end up making it. See you next time, and thank you for joining us for Together in the Kitchen.